We've heard Donald Trump describe you as a stupid guy who should be jailed. Mike Pompeo, he's called you a traitor. Then you have Nancy Pelosi, a Democrat, saying you chose profit over patriotism. Do you understand why people believe that by trying to sell your book, you're potentially selling out your own country?
Well, I don't think that way at all. I think the Democrats are upset that their political malpractice on impeachment brought them to failure, and so of course they're looking for others to blame. But it's the way they approach the impeachment process, I think, that preordained the outcome. That Donald Trump is upset with me doesn't surprise me at all. His reactions, frankly, have been childish and degrading to the presidency.
One of the most damning aspects of your book is that you basically confirmed that there was a quid pro quo with Ukraine. That's ultimately what got the president impeached, and yet you stayed quiet, you didn't testify in the impeachment inquiry. Critics say that that means you're complicit and cowardly.
No, I reject that completely. Look, the House Democrats took the impeachment process right off a cliff. And halfway down, they looked up and said, hey, come and join us. And I was not about to do that.
You paint a picture of him as almost in awe of strong men, you know, desperate for meetings with Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin. Were they playing him for a fool?
I think they were. I think they could see through him. I don't think they were overt about it. But I think they knew exactly who the mark was.
He would say that the relationship with those men he was able to foster in a way no other leader before him did.
Right. Well, let's take Kim Jong-un. He got nothing for it after 2 years of effort. In fact, in just the past few weeks, the North Koreans have literally blown up the liaison offices they constructed to have talks with the South Koreans. The whole thing came to nothing but a series of photo opportunities, which, with all due respect, I think was entirely predictable.
What really strikes me reading this book is all of those, if you like, cosmetic moments when we saw Donald Trump shaking the hands of world leaders and there was great fanfare, and you were a part of that. You were at those moments, embracing them publicly. Privately, it seems that you were very worried. How can readers trust you when it's such a shift?
One thing I've learned in years of experience in the Reagan administration, both Bush presidencies, is you're not going to have your point of view prevail all the time. In fact, probably most of the time it won't prevail. But you keep at it because you hope that you're making a contribution, and you continue to do it, and you don't speak out publicly while you're in the administration. You shouldn't try to undercut the president until you get to the point where, as a matter of your own personal judgment, you just can't do it anymore, that you think things are so off track that the only honorable thing to do is resign, and that's what I did.
Was re-election often put above national security?
In my judgment, yes. Trump doesn't really have a philosophy or a grand strategy or even policies that he follows. It's all about Donald Trump, and it follows from that. In many respects, he has a very short attention span, not when it comes to his re-election. His attention span there is infinite.
What do you think is his worst crime when it comes to foreign policy?
Look, I think ignorance is the worst crime. I just don't think that saying that I don't need more facts, I can sit down, as he has said, I can sit down with the Ayatollah Khamenei, we'll hammer out a nuclear deal in one day. It's just not true. So when I think of the prospect of him on the other side of the table from Vladimir Putin negotiating a strategic arms treaty, I'm very worried for the United States.
You described Donald Trump as stunningly uninformed, and that during one trip he appeared unaware that Britain was a nuclear power. Is he really that clueless?
I can tell you in that meeting, which was at Chequers, hosted by Prime Minister May, when the President made that comment, the stiff British upper lips didn't quiver, but their eyes got wide as saucers. And I was sitting there thinking to myself, what do we say next? And I think Prime Minister May changed the subject fairly quickly.
Well, let's talk about Theresa May and Donald Trump's relationship with her. You say that he didn't like her, that you felt the feeling was mutual. Can you elaborate a bit on that?
Well, I think they come from obviously very different backgrounds, have very different approaches to politics. My own opinion, and I can't prove this, I think he has trouble with women leaders. I think he had trouble with Chancellor Merkel of Germany. These are not substantive disagreements. These are personality issues. But because of the way Trump looks at relations with other leaders, he has enormous difficulty distinguishing between the personal relationship he has with the leader of another country and the fundamental U.S. relationship with the other country as a whole.
Do you think he's sexist?
You know, I don't know what the issue is, but time and again we seem to run into that difficulty. Don't get me wrong, he had bad relationships with plenty of male leaders too.
He says he's a stable genius. How would you describe him?
Well, let me ask you this. Do you know of anybody else in your personal acquaintance who would say that about themselves?
No.
Neither do I. So that's my answer. That tells you a lot about what you need to know.
Is there anyone in that White House Donald Trump will listen to? Who's the most important person in there right now next to him?
I think without question it's Jared Kushner, and I think this is another vulnerability. I think, you know, I don't insist as a matter of morality on anti-nepotism rules, but I think there's a common sense element to that has nothing to do with prohibiting favoritism to your family. It's you react to family people differently than you react to others, and the White House is not a family business. It's not a small enterprise.
The US is currently gripped by coronavirus, racial division. Is this a country in decline?
No, I don't think so at all, but I do think that Trump leadership during these two crises has made things worse. Much of our failure to respond effectively can be laid at Donald Trump's feet. Donald Trump didn't want to hear it. He didn't want to hear bad news about his buddy Xi Jinping. He didn't want to hear the truth about China covering up the extent of the threat of the coronavirus. Most important of all, he didn't want to hear about potential bad economic news for the United States from a widespread pandemic, which would endanger his ticket to re-election.
You say you won't vote for Donald Trump or Joe Biden, but you must be more concerned about the prospect of one of those men becoming president than the other.
Look, the choice is an unacceptable one to me, and that's why I'm going to write in a conservative Republican. It's a protest vote. I understand that. I also understand I live in Maryland, which will go for Joe Biden no matter how John Bolton votes. Other people on the Republican Party side have said they will vote for Biden. I respect that choice, but it's not mine.
Do you think he's dangerous?
Look, I think his inability or unwillingness to learn what an American president needs to know about strategic weapons, about the threat of proliferation of biological, chemical, and nuclear weapons, about the nature of the international system that we live in, his penchant for making gut-level decisions in the morning and then changing them in the afternoon. Yes, I think all of these things are dangerous, and I recount several instances, including a conversation I had with the former Chief of Staff, John Kelly, where we talked about our fear of what would happen in a crisis. And I think the coronavirus pandemic is a kind of crisis where what we feared has come true. And I fear more that in an even more serious crisis, it could be worse.